Welcome back. I'm with my guest, Sam Soul, who is the leader of Amabungani Investigative Unit. He's talking to us from our Durban studios there. Now, Sam, let's pick up on the threats to the lives of the whistleblowers. And this is a serious matter. We cannot make light of it. But just tell me, why are the whistleblowers so frightened for their lives that currently they are out of the country and they do not want to come back? What's going on around them?
Look, I think because, firstly, before we published all of this, before the commission came into existence, if somebody had got rid of them and managed to seize the material, seize the hard drives, because there were very few in existence very few copies in existence at that time. Then they could have shut the story down. And we see now again, at the commission, the very complex chain of evidence. And I must pay tribute to Brian and again to Stefans, I think, who drove this process, who recognized from the beginning that the chain of evidence had to be preserved in the sense that one could prove that the hard drive that came from Sahara or from a Sahara computer, etc., had not been tampered with, and that the copies that were made were true copies, were clones of the original hard drive, and they did that, and the value of them doing that, and the fact that affidavits had to be made from the sources to explain and confirm, the origin of the hard drives and how that chain of evidence was protected. Yeah.
Sure. So I want to talk about
Sorry,
now the journalist side of things, right? Getting access to this information. It's 300,000 plus emails, and they tell events of different occasions. So it takes time to tell one particular story. You've got to reference a lot of emails. Just tell me about the process that you embarked upon. And we learned that what we have seen and heard about is but a tiny portion of the whole story. You tell me more.
Yes, look, so what we realized is that we needed to put a team together. So we devoted most of the Amabungani team to this. Some people from Daily Maverick. Quite soon after, News 24 approached us, and our view was the story was so big that this kind of quite unusual collaboration rather than competition was warranted. We kind of set up a command center in Cape Town where most of the journalists were then based, working out of the Daily Maverick offices. And we fairly quickly identified some themes, and people took different themes and worked on them. We had assistance from ADIL in terms of the technical side, because some of these files were not readable. Some PDFs had to be extracted and made searchable. It was a huge undertaking because, as you'll appreciate, you can't read through 300,000 emails. So what you have to do is make the database searchable, including all attachments and that kind of thing. And then you have to look for themes, and when you find bits of evidence, you try and follow it backwards and forwards through time, through the different links within the email. And then you connect that to other information, company information, other sources that we had, other documents that we'd obtained, and you put together a narrative around the various themes. And I think this was the biggest piece of journalism that I will ever work on in my career. And I think we did justice to it. But it was a team effort.
Well, I've read some comments, people saying that why was this information not handed over to the authorities, that yourselves, together with the other people involved, may have broken the law in the process of accessing this information and somewhere it implies that there was always an agenda to try and embarrass the Gupta family and those associated with them. In other words, you are using illegally obtained information to cast aspersions on the way they were running their business and how they related to some of the top politicians in the country.
Yeah, you know, I think that argument is a bit of a joke now. Look, firstly, Brian, as Brian said, I think he had taken legal advice that the whistleblowers were in possession of the hard drives or the information legally, and that our use and possession of that information was in the public interest, that the public interest overrode any other legal considerations concerning privacy, etc. And I think what has come out, you know, has you know, blown away any suggestions to the contrary. We would not have the State Capture Commission without the evidence that has been revealed by these emails.
Is there more?
So I think it's been justified. Sorry?
Sure. Is there more that's still going to come out of those emails, or have we seen basically the substance of substantial amount of information to come out of these 300,000 emails, or is there still more to come?
Look, I would say that we've seen the substance, but you know, what was revealed to the Commission is that in terms of the recovery of what was on the damaged hard drive, what we received was, in a sense, the first generation of that recovery. But the Commission has now, via an international expert, been able to, you know, recover that material to, you know, 99 point what percent, and there may be additional material there that was unreadable for us or just not there. So we don't know what is there that we never had access to search, because it wasn't readable on the
now, Sam,
on the copy. That we had.
You and I may be familiar with what the Gupta leaks were all about in terms of the stories that you published ultimately together with your colleagues. But in summary, if you were to lift out a few of the key stories to emerge from the Gupta leaks emails, what would you say those are? Just to recap and to refresh, and also attach the importance that we are to this, that from the Zondo Commission's point of view, they will be attaching to the emails. What is it?
Look, I think it gives the mechanics and the detail of state capture. I think it shows how this family, with their political connections, was able to set themselves up as the gatekeepers for dealing with government, both in terms of appointments and in terms of contracts, and importantly, most importantly, of dealing with state-owned enterprises. So they ran the toll booth for dealing with government and dealing with state-owned enterprises, and we see that in the case of, you know, the locomotive purchases, for instance, there were commissions paid, which essentially, you know, amounted to bribes by the Chinese companies of around 20%. So 20% of the cost that Transnet paid on those locomotives were kickbacks, were so-called commissions. I think that gives you a sense of the scale of their influence and the extent of it.
Now, let's talk about the bad guys to emerge out of the emails. Are there particular individuals that you'd like to single out that, according to this information, should be appearing before the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo?
Look, I think there are a whole string. I mean, starting with the Gupta brothers, continuing with the president's son, who was used as a kind of a cutout with regard to his father, I think it's very crucial, the evidence that has been given so far in a couple of cases, particularly from Themba Maseko, which ties former President Zuma into facilitating this process by phoning people, talking to them, bringing them in, and saying, basically, these are my friends, or this is my son who's working with my friends. Do what you can to help them. And we see in the way in which that relationship was abused is the core of state capture.
Well, there's still more to come on this story, and of course the concerns about the safety of the whistleblowers who are currently out of the country. But Sam Soul, one of the people who brought the story to life, thank you very much for having been our guest on the program.